Well, hello and welcome to the Creating Connections podcast, where I bring voices and perspectives from people who are making a difference for children's learning and development. I'm Rachel Stewart, and I'm passionate about connecting with people to share experiences and learn from each other how we can best support children to thrive. As founder and director of Practically Learning, I specialise in developing the capacity of parents and educators through personal development coaching and professional learning programs to build relational capital and trust to engage in effective partnerships. I'm endlessly curious about what is happening in our world today, especially in our schools and in private practice, with those who are just as passionate about supporting children to thrive as I am. Through this platform, my mission is to share good news stories and strategies for what is working in how to improve the lives of children in our world today and for the future. In this series of the podcast, we're exploring different people, support networks, and organisations who are able to provide a circle of support for you as parents as you navigate your way through the school journey with your children. You will learn from a diverse range of people how they can support you to guide your children to reach their fullest potential as a unique and whole person. Today, I'm introducing you to Deb Cavanagh. Deb is a dedicated early childhood educator with over 25 years' experience in teaching, administration, and adult learning facilitation. She is committed to ensuring that families, communities, and the early childhood sector are knowledgeable, supported, and confident to work as a team to maximise potential for all young children. Deb is a mother of 3 boys who inspire her to continue to support children, particularly those who have been impacted by trauma and who are students at educational risk. She currently works as an allied health assistant in occupational therapy in rural Western Australia and is an interplay therapist. So I would like you to welcome Deb to the Creating Connections podcast today. Our lives have just become pretty crazy, really, haven't they?
I know. The speed of the world. We were just talking, my son and I, about the speed of the world and how, potentially in the next few years, children won't need, or children, young adults won't need to get a driver's license because they'll be waiting for the moment where they've got driverless cars. And you think, it just is like it's not just in a few years. Everything is so fast. It's moving. Tomorrow there'll be a change, and like AI is a great example, isn't it?
It is. And someone was telling me the other day they saw a Tesla with no driver in it. The driver must have put their seat back and was having a rest while the
No.
car was driving.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow.
And the car wasn't behaving either. It was doing some strange things. So that's a bit of a worry as well.
Yeah. Oh
I
wow. Yeah,
know.
no, I mean it's all too it's just all too like clever for me. I don't even understand the systems anymore. It's just beyond my little brain.
And I guess all of these new things that are happening so quickly is what we're here to talk about today, and the impact that
Yes.
our lives are having on our lives
Yes,
and all the big
absolutely.
changes that are happening just all around us, and how we're, as humans, we're probably struggling to keep up, really, aren't we?
Oh
And
yes.
wondering what the future does hold
Yeah.
for us and our kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, things have changed so rapidly. And even just talking with people, you know how you say, oh, the year's flying by so fast, and every year seems to speed up. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
just feels like we're already in March, and it feels like we only just started the year.
I know. And I think you're right, because we used to say, oh, wow, it's already March. But I think that I just said that yesterday about February. It is. It's a very big mind shift and speedier world somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And poor schools are really feeling it too, because it's such a short term,
Mhm.
and to cram so much in one term with very little staff to work with as well. I've just been speaking with a principal, and he was just saying how many schools are missing 9, 10 teachers, and the stress that
Yeah.
that's putting schools under is enormous. And then, of course, they're dealing with all the stresses of children's well-being, and that's stemming from family challenges as well. So it's just like a big endless cycle of challenges, isn't it? And
Yeah, it is. It's yeah, and
yeah,
I mean I think that's where I feel so strongly is that we owe it to our community to just take the foot off the pedal, just look at what's happening around us and I mean, like, the whole story about COVID, those COVID babies, they're going to be, they're going to be behind. What are they going to be behind? They're going to be, they're, they're going to grow at a different rate potentially, but they're not going to be non-contributing members of society as adults. It just is. We just need to look at the moment and move from there rather than stick on this treadmill.
Yeah, and it's
Somehow.
really our responsibility to make sure they are contributing members of society.
Exactly.
And how we do that is really, looking at how children have changed, and they have in many ways because of mostly, I would say, environmental, but also familial changes and society changes. Even in our lifetime, I mean, when I was a kid, I was always outside, always playing and creating, and that's how I became a creative person and loved
Yep.
my freedom because I was always out in the bush and had so
Yep.
much freedom. So that environment was quite beneficial for me for my creative skills and also cognitive and non-cognitive development. But I
Yeah.
also had challenges within my family that I had to navigate and have had to as an adult as well. So I don't think anyone's immune to any challenges. It's just how we are taught and guided in how to actually manage those challenges and also how to enjoy life and
Yes.
see the joy in life. Would you
Yes.
agree that a lot of changes have happened, particularly in your work in early childhood, in the way that children are engaging in learning and also how they're able to do basic things?
Oh, absolutely. It's really quite disconcerting to see. I remember when I went back from first thing of maternity leave and went back into the classroom and went, what's happened in those few years of children didn't no longer sat at tables for meals, and children didn't know what to do with blocks because they wanted a Lego set that was, they built the thing that the Lego box said to build, and that was it. It was, and children didn't know what to do in a home corner. And I thought it fascinated me that just in a few years, they had lost so many things that were just so basic to what they needed, and they weren't experiencing and trialing and erroring and refining and developing ideas at all. They were just process driven, they were, or product driven. They were just creating the product and that was it. Then next, what do we do now?
Yeah,
was
very structured.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that, that goes into their whole lives. Their whole day is structured with whatever the family dynamic and the family setup is. And I get that the families have got enormous pressures, but it's a big toll on children's, development.
Mm. And so, in terms of the types of support that children need now, what are you seeing is the greatest issue? Is it that families are too structured, or there are, I suppose, some children who are experiencing very non-structured families as well, where there's no routine or there's no boundaries or
Yeah, yeah,
limited boundaries? Are you
yeah.
seeing that as well?
Yeah, and I think both sides of, structured or unstructured, there's the boundaries is a problem. We've blurred the edge of what children, the people who are, or the people the people who are so structured are too frightened to say no. They just, because they're on the next thing is the next thing is the next thing is. And so those, a lot of those families, the boundaries aren't there. The boundaries are made by external things like we've got to get in the car rather than, internal things. And for the non-structured families, there's no boundaries either. And I think that puts an enormous amount of cognitive load on a little mind and a whole family structure to not know where your boundaries are. Everybody likes to have a boundary. Yes, we push against them, but we actually love them, and that's part of your our attachment and our connection and our relationships. We all want to have a boundary. And I think that that's one of the key things that's missing, is that there are no boundaries, and also there's not always consequences that are consistent. And I don't mean that you have to be, that it has to be discipline. I mean that it has to be a consistency of understanding that there's a reason why we're doing this, and it can be negotiated depending on the age and the family structure with the children. But I think that we've lost a lot of those very basic fundamental things that mean that it's an easier ride. So much energy is putting into fighting back against something that we don't know where the edge is.
Yes. So when you talk about being in the moment and in the now, do you mean that we need to really look at what's happening with children now and working around that and working around children and their challenges, or is there a space, or is it a matter of solving the problem, or is it working with them around what their current abilities are at this time and trying to just work through those? What suppose we're always trying to look for answers, as you and I are sort of involved in the same space where we're trying to support families and trying to help them to connect with good support networks to be able to manage. But there's no simple answer, is there? It's really each individual child is different and each has different needs.
Yep.
Is it the children that need support more than the parents, or parents need more support to be able to manage the children?
Wow.
It's a big question, I know. But that's why we're here, to ask the big questions.
Absolutely. I think it's a bit of both. I think that I think it comes back to a societal thing that we've lost a lot of the or at the moment we don't have necessarily the community around us. And with I think there's a space with parents where they didn't have the community around them, and I think that we're seeing it's almost like an intergenerational trauma. We're seeing a generation that aren't confident as parents, and I think that a lot of that is either the progression of humanity, or it's the dreaded social media that you perceive something that's not real because you're seeing it every day, or you're not actually making any decisions yourself because an external force is telling you what to do or how to do it, but not why. And I think that, and then there's the big systems that are then telling parents, my unfavorite word is readiness. Like, why are we saying that children school readiness? Why are we saying that? Because that's putting an undue pressure on families and an undue pressure on children to be something that they're not yet. I think that we're rushing to become adults, and the whole family is rushing for the child to become an adult, because that's what they're being told to do. So I don't know if that's an answer, but it's just what I'm sort of seeing and thinking that's why I'm so keen to empower families and empower parents to know that they are the most important person in the child's life. They should be the most important person in the child's life, and therefore they need to understand what their child is doing, why their child's doing it, and have the support around them to be able to navigate it, because they've got the fast lanes are flying around them, and they don't have the time to no one's allowed to make mistakes anymore. I go, let's make mistakes, let's honor those mistakes. Fabulous.
I think you're right, and I think perhaps it's because there is so much information for parents and so many parenting books and resources and a bit of an overload of information, and there's lots of influencers online who are telling them, that they should look perfect and have the perfect birthday party for their child and all of those things, those pressures that are not really important.
Yeah.
what's most important, and what I'm observing too, is that children are actually seeking attention from their parents in different ways because they're not getting their attention, or they're not sort of sitting necessarily with their children and observing them and talking with them and guiding them in how to actually uh, be a good person and how to behave and all of those things that parents need to be doing. And this is not a judgment on parents, but and not all parents are the same. We don't want to put every parent in the one basket because every individual's different and everyone's circumstances are different. And I do believe that what you said about the intergenerational trauma, I think that we model how we were parented in a lot of ways, or we go the opposite way and do the complete opposite of what our parents did because we don't want to be our parents. But I think there's a lot to be said about perhaps a lot of us didn't have great role models either as parents, and our parents just did the best they could, and that's what we're trying to do as well. But yeah, I think that with the introduction, I suppose, of social media and other distractions, we're so distracted by everything else that we do forget to be in the moment with our kids and really focused on what they're saying and reading between the lines of what they're saying and having that emotional intelligence to be able to support them in ways that they need it. And if they're not getting that support, they're seeking attention elsewhere or community elsewhere. And of course, communities for us, I suppose, as children were also, there was a lot more volunteers organising things in community, and also schools needing to be social centres as well. And we know that during COVID that sort of stopped for a while, and some schools have either struggled to get parents back in, or they're not wanting to have parents back in the community. So where do you go? You go online, and I'm seeing so many Facebook groups popping up now where parents are piling expectations on top of each other and having these high expectations for their kids, particularly, around NAPLAN and all those sorts of things that don't really matter. In the end of the day, what matters is that your child is developing and is being loved and cared for and nurtured and feels safe. And I think that's a big thing too, that children feel safe.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that now I've completely lost my train of thought. The safety issue is also just parents understanding that you don't actually have to give or be in the moment for a lot of hours of a day. It is moments that are meaningful moments. So it's a lot of the research looking at children's response to expressions and body language is a parent being down on the child's level, and actually having that moment and the confidence just to sit and be with the child, because the child will actually mostly, or children will mostly do their own learning. They will take an experience and they'll drive the learning, because we're innate learners, and innately we want to be in a relationship and connected to someone. So it's really just building our parents' capacities to understand that you're scaffolding and facilitating experiences that are incredibly meaningful. And I think that's one of the big things that I'm seeing that there's a lack of, is that parents aren't understanding, or they're sometimes they're frightened of that relationship. And I think that a lot of that is the external pressures that are saying, oh, is that how you do it? Oh, no, we don't do it that way. Oh, now the new thinking is like this. And have you seen how she does it? There's also a lot of pressure on buying things, that's how you'll be successful. And I think, why have we forgotten that a hose, a cardboard box, and a pile of leaves is mind-blowingly rich? I really wonder about yeah, the capacity of people to understand that it is moments in time, and a moment doesn't have to be long.
Yeah, spoiling your kids with experiences, not material
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Because then life passes by. If they're not observing nature, if they're not actually out in nature and seeing the wonders of, watching birds. And I used to love going for walks with my kids and just listening to their conversations and their questions and really encouraging their curiosity
yeah,
and the way that they think
yeah.
differently as well,
Oh,
and
oh, and I
celebrating
think
that.
that was, yeah, I think that was why, like, I knew that I was always going to be drawn and work in early childhood was because of the wonder of kids. They just, and the fact that they are, when they're little, what you see is what you get. So they will have their undies on the outside and they will wear gum boots in the middle of summer. And,
And that's
that's
okay.
absolutely, absolutely, and there's no, like, they almost strut their stuff in that stage because it doesn't matter, and what they're experiencing is their own growth and development. When you talk about looking at the birds, etc. Some of my work with little children, with my play sessions, are around just saying to the parents, do you see that by looking through the leaves of a tree that we're actually developing our children's vision, not their eyesight, but their vision, depth perception, blah, blah, blah. And so lots of it comes back to, which I don't like doing because of the school readiness type thing, but we're pushing against a system in so many ways. And so I'll say, this is reading, because they're tracking, they're actually able to see beyond the front leaves to be able to see what's in the background, which is what letters are like. And they're watching that bird that goes across the sky. They're actually going left to right. You're throwing a ball, they're tracking, things like that, that is teaching parents that how important those experiences are, and that they're not abandoning their children by not having the latest scented Play-Doh. They're looking through the trees is actually just as beneficial.
If not more.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I take gum nuts because I'm a country girl, so I take gum nuts in with and talk to parents about the size of the gum nut is actually a fist size that is great for children to learn about proprioception, pressure, and pushing back, and knowing how much pressure you need to do. But it's also developing arches of hands and things like that. It's just it just amazes me how we need to not the explanation isn't what's needed, but how we just need to give parents permission again to do the things that are natural to a child but will actually be the foundation for who they become.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's part of the reason I wrote my book, and I run learning through play workshops, because just touching on that, what you mentioned before about parents being afraid of the relationship with their kids. And it
Yeah,
is because it is very profound relationship and like nothing you've ever experienced before.
yeah,
And I do recall, and I wrote this in the first chapter of my book, about how I felt the first time I saw my daughter born. And I looked into her eyes and I was just amazed. Like, how is this little person here already? Like, all of a sudden, this little person is in my arms, and the feeling is absolutely amazing. But it's such a challenging, but also joyful relationship to navigate.
yeah.
How can we help parents find more joy in that relationship, and knowing that it's okay if they make mistakes, and it's
Yes.
okay when they throw a tantrum? It's okay because they're still learning and they're seeking our guidance,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and giving them guidance in a way that is loving. And that's part of the challenge, I suppose, as parenting, is because your egos can come to the forefront. You get impatient, you get angry, you get frustrated, especially if you're trying to get to work in the morning. And how do we support parents to navigate those situations, but also to take the time and opportunities? I think opportunity conditions, or seizing the moments to actually, we've got spare half an hour, let's go for a walk. Let's
Yeah.
go and observe nature and talk about it, and um, maybe educate parents more around the benefits for their learning at school also of play and experiences and taking them on outings and those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that maybe we should be, because some parents are stuck in the I'm busy, my world is busy, which it is. I mean, I'm certainly not denying that.
Yeah.
So maybe it's, the fact that while we're walking, we can do something else at the same time, or let's walk to the shops. So you're almost doing two things at once, so that because I think busy adult heads are going, yeah, but I've got to do that after, or so while we're walking, we're going to um, I don't know, go and collect the eggs, or we're going to take the washing off the line. That is actually walking. So trying to build little aspects that then become successful and become bigger aspects, so that we sort of realize that we've got more time, or we can do two things at once. The difficulty with that is that your adult focus then becomes, right, well, I've got to get to the shops. When I get to the shops, I've got to do this and do this, and I wonder if the child's going to behave and blah blah blah. So it's
Is it worth it?
yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's finding the balance that's right for the individual family. But then again, that's where I feel strongly that we need to get back into a system of individual families have individual needs. And
Yes.
I think that for me, in the education system, what I found difficult was that it's a big system that often doesn't have time or space or capacity for having 23 individuals and 23 individuals with families and cousins and siblings. So it's we're fighting against I don't know, a societal system that thinks that to drive forward it all needs to be same. That it's not. We need to see each individual.
Yeah, because as society has changed, work, how we work changes. There's more of both parents working. There's more families with single parents or separated parents who are going through their own traumas.
Yeah.
But the system has pretty much remained as is, and that is a very huge challenge for families to navigate because of all the different things that they're facing in the home.
Yeah.
How do you think that schools need to shift their narrative and the way that they do things to be able to still teach the curriculum, still get these children to a level where they're supposed to be at? And we know that schools are under enormous pressure, to lift results and for that to be on display, through NAPLAN and those sorts of testing that constantly saturate our media and
Yeah.
fear into parents.
Mm-hmm.
How do things need to shift? I mean, I've got my own ideas around this, but how do you think that things need to shift to accommodate families and their needs rather than just the school's needs?
Yeah. Wow, what a great impossible question to answer. A really, 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 really big pot and just shake it or stir it up. It's I think it takes, I think it's going, I think about it a lot, and I think that it's going to take very, very brave leadership. And I think that we have to, that there's two elements, that the system needs reviewing and revising, and that's almost a separate, that's a separate conversation. So within the school structure, I think that it's, for me, brave leadership comes back to relationships. So building relationships with the families, obviously, but building relationships within the staff so that the staff feel seen and heard. And I don't think it's impossible. Like I that's what I love doing that. but it takes an enormous amount of time, and I think that's the other thing, is that we've got to respect that the first 3 weeks of the school year should all be around setting up the relationships
Yes.
between staff, setting up relationships with the children, and allowing those to develop, because then you have got the capacity to notice differences and notice nuances between the children or the staff relationships, and then or being brave enough to maintain that throughout the year, so that when things come up, I was really lucky working in a school that happened to have an empty classroom, and I had a little girl she was 7, and she was the most hypervigilant child I have ever worked with, and was constantly looking for escape routes. And she was a DC FP child who'd been in back home, out of home, back home, so she had so much trauma in her life. But what I was able to end up doing was to create a classroom that was a home corner. So this 7-year-old had dolls in it, and she wasn't overly interested in the dolls, but she loved the pretending to cook. And just when she was going to lose her mind, I would just say, let's go and cook. And she would literally, I'd sit next to her and she'd be role playing and like just experiencing something she had never experienced. And from this little girl at the start of the year who could not interact with any of her peers, because I knew that we seek our peers, we seek connection. By the end of the year, she never needed to go to that room and never needed to do, individual programming or anything, because she had fixed and healed something that had been missed. And she needed to heal that part before she could become a 7-year-old. So I think that schools, it's actually that I think that we need to I think we need to go to that level where we're actually acknowledging that we are needing to have the place of healing so that our children can learn. And I taught in a special in a language development centre with children with developmental language disorder, and I was in a year 1 class, and we had some children who had come in at the kindy age and some children that came in at the year 1 age, and the kindy children had 2 years of a very structured language program, so they knew what to expect. But some of those kindy and pre-primary children didn't learn as quick, had been learning this for 2 years. They didn't pick it up as quickly as those new year 1s that came in, because those new year 1s were cognitively and developmentally ready to learn it. So they picked it up in seconds, whereas we potentially dragged the children through through a year of, come on, you've got to learn these sounds. This is an ad. We're going to put them together, things like that. And we essentially potentially wasted a period of learning where they could have got it much quicker at a little bit later. So I think that there's got to be some flexibility. I get that we've got external pressures on us. I get that we have to do this NAPLAN thing that is, now it's in March, which seems insane because we haven't got time to build our relationships and practice what they did last year to get right for March.
They haven't even learned anything yet.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're just relying on something that they've forgotten because they had 6 weeks of summer holidays.
Yeah, and that's
I think that we just need to. I think brave leadership means that we're slowing down and understanding that slowing down and going back and giving good catch up to foundations is going to be way, way, way more beneficial long term.
Absolutely. And it comes back to that tapping into parent knowledge about the child too, doesn't it? Because if a child does have a fairly ordinary morning and then they get to school and they're struggling to get into their learning, I have seen in some schools they do amazing things with kids in the mornings. They have a quiet corner for some kids, a little tent with books and
Yeah,
things that they can go and sit in there and just have some quiet time before the class starts, and teachers who are really in tune with the
yeah,
students and can
yeah.
see if they've had a bad morning, or because I'm actually working with a couple of twins at a pair of twins at the moment, and to completely different personalities, and really struggle to get to school in the mornings, and just the type of morning they've had before they even get to school is just, it's quite a challenge. So you can imagine that having 23 to 25 of them in the
Yeah.
mornings and not really ready to learn because they're still half asleep from the night before
Oh,
and that sort of thing. It's just
yeah.
uh, it's a constant battle for teachers. But if they connect with parents and have those,
Yes.
quick conversations, okay, yep, had a good morning this morning. Oh, he might be in a bit of a mood, just so that they can check in
Yeah.
and see. And I know that that's not possible for every parent, but at least if the teacher's a little bit informed, then it makes their job a bit easier as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that it is, it's hard to connect with everybody, but I think that's part of your relationship building is how do you want me to connect with you? Well, how is the best way that I
Yes.
can connect with you, mum or dad or carer? Because everybody has also got different um, levels of communication, different, the different experiences, different, and definitely different experiences of school. I mean, we've all been to school, and we all have been, I might have absolutely loved it, or I might have absolutely hated it, and therefore you're frightened of having a relationship with the teacher, so it is really important to work out how do you want me to communicate with you, what's the best way, and to do those good news stories, like overkill the good news so that you're building that positive, um, and coming from strength, like let's not look at what you can't do, let's look at what you can do, and then build that capacity on from that. I love rooms that have got tents in them, and things that just give that child an opportunity to just self-regulate, or and
Mm.
they can't self-regulate, you're co-regulating with them, let's face it, you just need to be there. I had a mum who or a little boy that came in, and he was 5, he had no language, not even, like babies learn syllabification, so they might go ba 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 ba. This little boy just went he had nothing because he'd had zero interaction with another human.
Wow.
And mum was very, very, very traumatized. And she was, I still to this day don't know why they sent the little boy to school. I'm so glad they did, because he was just glorious. But for the mum, I just used to say to her in the morning, oh, the kitchen's over there, and she used to go into the pre-primary kitchen, and literally she'd just stand, and it was she was far enough away from all of us, but it was her first human interaction herself, and so it took probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks before she made eye contact with me. But I didn't have any expectations of, I just gave her a space to be and to feel safe. And then we slowly built this amazing rapport. And you just think you have to do those things,
Mm.
because I hate to imagine what her and his trajectory would have been within education if she had not felt that she was seen or heard or understood.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and that's why I say I think it takes brave leadership. It's it's an incredibly difficult thing to navigate, but I don't think we've got a choice. I don't think that our children can survive, their mental health can survive, or their physical, if they've got no physical strength, how on earth are they supposed to sit up and read and write nap plan or do whatever if we're not if we're not addressing these foundations that have been missed and are being missed.
Yeah, and it takes intentional leadership as well in terms
Yes.
of the expectations on staff to build relationships with parents, and I guess part of my work is to provide the skills that teachers need to be able to do that and to
Yes.
overcome any potential biases or perceptions of parents.
Yeah.
And, the parent that you shared just then, we don't know what trauma she's been through or, the challenges that she's faced in her life. And even just to get her child to school is probably a massive
Oh,
effort for her and achievement
yeah.
for her, especially if she struggles socially as well. And there are many people who are struggling socially now
Absolutely. Yep.
and potentially, just struggling to get through every day. And even though teachers, it's not their job to take on the
No.
burdens of other
Yeah.
people or the traumas of other people, they need the skills to be able to manage themselves in those interactions and knowing how to build rapport and have empathy
Yeah.
and awareness and emotional awareness of what that person might be going through, and to read the cues. Like you said,
Yeah.
you read the
Yeah.
cues and okay, she doesn't feel comfortable in this space, let's go to another place where she might feel more safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have you
Yeah.
seen other examples of how schools are doing that?
I I have seen I've seen schools that are open and receptive, and I guess what I worry about is that some of those schools are looking at it and going, oh yes, we're, for example, we're trauma informed, and I'm I think that, they start really well. And once we get to this, we're in the third year now, so we've embedded this, is when it all starts to unravel, because it becomes a statement rather than, or an assumption, we are, or we're asthma friendly, or we're, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We almost need to have a review cycle all the time going, okay, what does that actually mean? Let's change the term. It's still the same thing, but let's just call it a new name now and revisit it and revise and review. Have I seen schools? I haven't seen a lot of schools that are able to provide the space and provide the support. And I think that that's probably where the department's funding is, it makes it difficult. That we are, schools are understaffed. It's hard to get relief teachers. It's hard to get anything like that. So that's impacting right now. But I think also that it's why do you need this person? Schools that are using chaplains are doing well, incorporating that system into giving some of that space
Pastoral
to
care.
families. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I struggle to see schools that aren't struggling.
Yeah.
And it's not because they don't care. Everyone care. Most people who are in education are incredibly caring and nurturing people. I think that we just need to a little bit push back and show vulnerability and show that we understand the foundations again. Yeah.
Yeah. I know of a school that has a community hub, and one of the schools I used to work with and where my children went, we created a family school partnerships culture
Yeah.
where we actually had art classes and we had a music class and an Italian class for parents. So those who were disconnected from any family or community were able to come in and learn a skill. And this other school I know, they have this community hub, and it's in a very low SES area, and a lot of the families don't speak English, so they have English speaking classes to help them and they try and support them get work as well, and just different things that they do for the families to support them and know that they are supported and part of a community. But that takes
Yeah.
a lot of intention
Absolutely.
and really genuine connection
Yeah.
with staff who are really dedicated to supporting those families and the children.
Yeah.
but I've had conversations with them about, that the fact that they have a team, they're resourced quite well, but they've really focused on that because they see the need in their community. And that sort of removes the teachers a little bit from that responsibility, but they still have a responsibility to build relationships with the students.
Yeah.
I guess that makes it a bit easier for them to do that when they know that the families are being supported.
Yeah.
And it gives it that additional, I suppose, sense of safety and community in the school.
Yeah.
So and I think that is a really successful model so far for that community. And they've also got a kindergarten there as well, so they're supporting families right from early childhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's I think that's you're right. That's where we need to go to. We need to be a wraparound service. I don't know what it's like on the East Coast, but I have been through my whole career being absolutely um, amazed how far apart the health department and the education department are, or that they just don't talk to each other. And I think, really, we've got child health nurses, infant health nurses, we've got pediatricians, we've got occupational therapists, speech pathologists, physiotherapists, and yet we don't talk to each other.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Extraordinary. It is extraordinary. I mean, we're getting more. The language development centre I was at had started a speeches in schools program, so providing some speech pathologists within schools, and it's only a trial. It's only just sort of started, but the demand is insane. And you think, well, there you go. There's a huge need that schools are asking for and begging for, and the same with occupational therapists. We need these wraparound services within our schools to give that added support to teachers, to give that, like you say, it's not within a teacher's role to do so many of these things, especially in an overcrowded curriculum with some crazy expectations. So it's, there is an obligation to support teachers. Otherwise, we're going to have more and more schools that are saying, we can't get relief teachers today.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of leadership who are going back into the classroom because they simply can't find enough teachers. So that's additional pressures on them as well. So in your work, in your business, how do you support families and schools to connect with community organisations and with specialists, such as
I guess
pathologists and OTs?
I guess I've got community workshops. So I do, to try and get as many families in. I do the play in the park and work through libraries, etc., to just do play sessions and talk about, how that is growth and development. And because I've worked in the health department as well and have a relationship with them, I can refer on if you need me to, or I can talk you through the referral service or process. So that's on a community level. And that's been, fabulous and really, again, really nice because it's safe place for parents. They're just playing and the kids are playing, and I do all of it outside because I just think, the power of nature and space is incredible. That's safe space. Parents can sidle up to you and ask a question, or they can just absorb, or they can, look. And I have posters around that talk about why we do tummy time, or why we do crawling, why those are important. So different aspects are sort of like a feature of each session, and then individual families are either referred to me by the health department, or just by me being loud and in the community, and also because in this particular small community, I taught lots of the parents as just 5-year-olds, so they know me.
Well, that's handy.
Yes, it is. So I do a lot of work with individual families, and it's interesting because I think, like we said before, previously, is that a lot of it is, for me, it's hand holding, so that I'm just guiding them through what the school looks like, or what the, if they get your child did this, or your child needs this, or can you help your child with this. It's really just guiding them to know that it's not scary, that we can do it together and we can build capacity together. And then also, in the flip side, then I work with the school. If the school have identified that a child needs some extra something or other, then I will come in with the parent and talk, let's write an individual plan if we need one, or let's introduce some strategies that are going to help the entire classroom anyway, so they're not onerous or burdensome. They're just additions to, how are you going to go out to recess? Well, let's jump today instead. So really basic but fundamental things. And then I also work with educators in providing professional learning on what early development looks like and why it's important. Or in some of the childcares that I've been working in, it's interesting because what they want is behavior. So I do behavior as an unmet need. It's not a problem. So let's look at the underlying need and let's look at what we can do to change the structure. So I do a lot of mentoring in that space. And the other one that a lot of them want is on communication, which is really interesting because it's either communication with the child, and that comes a lot is to do with behavior, or it's communication with the parent. How do we do it? And so, it's building the capacity of educators. And I try to do, I do the same language with all groups that I'm working with, so that, and I say to them all, we need to get a common language that's going to, so that if we're talking on a Zoom call and we're all talking the same thing, we're all understanding, so it's not confusing, it's consistency.
Yeah. I like how you called the behavior of children unmet needs, because it seems to be a huge challenge for schools at the moment, children's behavior. And it's interesting that we were talking before about the fact that children are seeking attention from their parents and from teachers, obviously, and especially if they're not getting attention at home, they could be seeking it elsewhere, and that's an unmet need. How much work do you need to, or do you do with teachers to help them understand, and parents, to help them understand that children do have needs, and how to identify them? Because sometimes it is tricky to understand what their needs are, but it often comes back to values, doesn't it? What their highest value is at that moment.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I tend to talk about regulation versus tantrum. And so that's, like a starting point, which is, so let's talk about what's happening. There is a difference. So is it something that they need, or is it something that they need? And, so we unpack those two sides and talk about, that there's very few tantrums. Most tantrums are age appropriate because they haven't got the language capacity or the emotional literacy yet to be able to articulate what their little body frantically wants. And then I talk about, the importance of regulation. So we're not ever going to be able to function unless we regulate it. And so a lot of the training and a lot of the capacity building comes into, let's look at what's happening with our sensory system. And let's look at what's happening when we're not meeting those sensory needs, or we're not understanding those sensory needs, and how just incorporating that understanding switches so quickly. So for me, a lot of the stuff comes to, what's the quickest way that we can see a change? Let's go with that, and then you've got the buy-in straight away. It's incredible.
Yeah.
They just keep coming back for more. It's fabulous.
How do we get buy-in very quickly?
Yeah.
I had one of my twins had a screaming tantrum. A scream I've never heard before. It was so loud, it was ear piercing. And it came down to the lack of control. And obviously, it comes back to those I suppose, shadow values in some ways, that I'm feeling out of control here, so I have to get back in control. So I'm going to
Yeah,
scream and I'm going to throw things and I'm going to assert my control and my authority, I suppose,
yeah,
over my sister, because it was with her, she was fighting with her sister, and the other sister is quite dominating of her. So that's her way of getting
yeah,
back control, which
yeah,
is not it's not healthy, but
yeah.
identifying that really quickly is a real skill, isn't it? And knowing what to
Yes,
do
yeah.
then, what to do next.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, and it does take time, especially when it's become a habit, you know, and so it's slowly crept in and you just haven't you can no longer identify why this is happening. You just identify that the behavior is there or the response is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is tricky to navigate. And that's why I think, you know, I talk about hand holding with parents, is that a lot of it's interesting how many parents are saying, you know, I don't know what to do when she does this, or I don't know what to do when he does this. And you think, well, I can observe in a non emotional way,
Yes.
and you know, we can talk it through, and it's powerful. Yeah, but I think, you know, there's also an element when we talk about tantrums, like it's or screaming or whatever it is. It's that it's a child, you know, they haven't developed their cortex is not developed until, you know, at least 25.
Yeah.
And
They're still
we're
trying to work out
expecting
how to
them.
express themselves.
Exactly, we're expecting them to do that. And you know, another thing that I'll say to parents is, what language do you model, and what language do they understand? So we always say to our children, are you happy or sad? You know, those two words children understand. But what is frustration? You know, we throw that word at them sometimes, but they don't know that that's what it is. And often you need to model that you're frustrated, because feelings are all the time. They ebb and flow the whole day. They're not, and they're all okay. We're allowed to have every single feeling. You know, it's important to have every single feeling. It's how you navigate that feeling that's the trick. So that, yeah, building the emotional literacy and building that sense of what emotions are. And I always say to parents, try really hard to change your language to I am feeling blah blah blah. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling angry. You're not angry, because we don't want children to self-actualize that that's what they are. I'm not an angry person. I'm just feeling angry in this moment, and that feeling can move. You know, so there's so much power in what we do say and what we don't say for, you
Oh,
know, for our
yes.
children to try and navigate.
And sometimes we accidentally say the wrong thing, and that's okay too. We just be
Absolutely.
mindful of it and say something different the next time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And you know, even admitting to children, you know, in whatever phase you're in, whether it's a parent, a teacher, an administrator, or whatever it is, you know, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have said it like that, or oh, I didn't mean that, or look at this mistake I've just made. I mean, I love demonstrating making mistakes, because I think that it gives, and I think that that might be from my childhood experience, was that I grew up in a fabulous home, and there were expectations, I think, on, you know, that you were good and you behaved and you did it well and you did it. And I think I because of that, I was not a risk taker until probably, I don't know, 10 years into my teaching career, when I looked at families and children and thought, yeah, no, we all need to take risks. I need these children to take risks. Therefore, I've got to take some risks. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
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 because they're mirrors of us anyway. So they're
absolutely.
always watching what you're doing. And that's interesting point that you make, actually, because if we expect our kids to be good all the time, then they're less likely to be risk takers. And you need in life sometimes to take risks, or calculated risks,
Yeah,
and to be discerning in what you do. But also, you don't want to also raise children who are people pleasers as well. You
Exactly.
want them to rebel.
Exactly.
You want
Yeah.
you want to see them rebel a little bit and then
Yeah.
navigate their way through that, because
Yeah.
at certain ages they do start to rebel. Like, 7, 8-year-olds, they start to question things and they start to
Yeah.
push the boundaries, and you've just got to constantly shift the way as a parent that you navigate that. And
Yeah.
okay, they're going through this phase at the moment. I think I can sort of give them a little bit of leeway here, but they still need to stick to these boundaries and and
Yeah.
and negotiate with them. They're at an age where you can start negotiating.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, and at the age that they can negotiate is really interesting because there's so much research and or not, I don't know if it's research, more chat around the fact that we need to give our children agency, and yes, we do. They need to be making decisions, but the boundaries still come in. You
Yes.
can make some decisions. Here are your choices,
Yep.
because
Only
I
give them
know.
two choices. That's it.
Yeah, when they're little, or let's talk about these two choices, and you can justify why you want one or the other. That's
Yes.
that's awesome, and that's amazing, and that's empowering. But it's safe. You're not leaving them to fail. You're supporting them to grow.
And it
And as they get
satisfies their
older,
need to be in control as well.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's a way to avoid those tantrums because you're actually
exactly.
giving them back control in a different way.
Yes. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, yeah. I mean, child development is just mind blowing, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
exciting. Yeah.
It's a constant minefield
Oh,
of
yeah, yeah,
surprises.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I can't believe, I don't, I love that at my age I'm still learning so much, and revising what I did when I first started teaching. I would do half of it now. I would change so many approaches of what I did, and that's mostly on what I know about children, and what I know about families, and my own experiences. Like, we never stop, do we?
No, we never stop learning and learning about ourselves as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes that's not helpful. It's very scary.
It does all start with us. So yes, I think, yeah, a bit of self-care and self-awareness is definitely needed when you're a parent, for sure.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, it's
I've
been
never got.
absolutely wonderful having this conversation with you today. Is there anything else that you would like to share about your work or with parents and educators, about any sort of advice that you'd like to give them today, or if you'd like to
Well,
share
I think
more about your
mostly
work?
trust yourself as a parent. Remember that you're doing the best that you can do with the experiences that you've had. Reach out and find the joy. Just find the joy in a moment. If you're having a really, really tough time with a little e or a biggie or anything in between, try and find something joyful in your day and do it for you that makes your day easier. um for educators, I think, be brave, be really brave, and know your children, know who you've got in front of you, and honor each little person, because they are there while we're here, and they are the most important people in our lives.
They are. They're like special little gifts given to us
Oh,
to
I'm
enjoy for
sure.
a very short time. And
Yeah,
we need to make the most of every moment, as you shared in
yeah,
our chat today. So,
yeah,
so thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait to share this with our audience so that they can learn a few tips from you and from both of us. And
yes.
I wish you all the best with your work, because I'm fairly sure you're going to be extremely busy. And just thank you so much for supporting parents and supporting educators and doing such great work to
Oh,
ultimately help children.
yeah, well, you're welcome, and I thank you for introducing me to your world, because that's been fabulous, and I've really enjoyed this too. I look forward to connecting
Likewise.
again.
Okay.
See
Thanks,
you.
Deb.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this episode from our Circle of Support series of the podcast. If you would like further information about how to be in contact with our guest from today, please click on the links below. If you are a parent who is struggling with any of the issues we've raised in this episode, I invite you to book a call with me by clicking on the link below or scanning the QR code on the screen, so you can share with me what challenges you're experiencing, and I can share how I may be able to support you as you guide your child or children through their learning. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our Creating Connections podcast to continue to learn from myself and our guests how you can best support your child as they navigate their learning. I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you on the next episode in our Circle of Support series.